making sure that we can actually get things working. All right, hello internet. I think we're live now.
Yo, are we live? Yes, I see you too. Yes. Yes. So that is what retro rage looks like.
Yes. What's up, everyone? This is FGC UCLA's Ursine Combo Lab Audio, episode number 17. We're going to be talking about tournament formats. But before we get there, we do need to make sure that audio is even working in the first place. Obviously, I'm Crucial Drive. This is Retro Rage. This is the first time we've done such an in-person level podcast, so we need to make sure that audio is quite balanced, and we even have Waka joining us from over the internet as well. What's up, Waka?
Yo, hello, greetings.
Let us know in the live stream chat if you can hear us clearly, and hopefully things will go smoothly for this episode.
Oh, yeah,
let me tune in to the.
Oh yeah. Go for it.
Let's see if it pulls up.
I can hear you guys. That's
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear yourself at least in the stream?
I feel like it could be slightly louder, but it could just be my laptop's audio settings.
No, I can make it louder. Absolutely.
Yeah, I can hear myself.
Okay. So I made it a little louder on my end. Hopefully that reflects on the stream too. But yeah, guys, this is the first time.
It's so weird. I'm hearing a delay response.
Yeah, it's delayed. Of course it's going to be delayed, but at least hopefully it's audible and it's not too uncomfortable with the audio levels.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this is the first time we've done in-person podcasts. I've been in LA for the weekend to reunite with the guys at UCLA. We did the Mr. Game tournament on Friday, and then there was a Yu-Gi-Oh stuff on Saturday, so all of that was pretty fun. And today we're culminating the entire weekend of Memorial Day by, obviously not Memorial Day today, but culminating the weekend by... Yes, the weekend. By kicking off a podcast episode on a much discussed topic of late, which has been tournament formats. Specifically, Twitter, the cycle of Twitter is never ending. People talk about the same things, what seems like every month or so. And it so happens that this past month, people have been talking about first to one, first to two, first to three. We'll touch these in depth because there's a lot that can be touched on with those alone. We'll also be talking about different kinds of formats you can run for tournaments, such as like Swiss. What else is there? Double elimination, triple elimination. Which triple elimination does exist in other games, not FGC really, but typically FGC favors double elimination brackets. And then we'll talk about open versus closed circuits and how those can affect the landscape of competitive scenes for different games. FGC, of course, typically uses open circuits for pretty much everything. Okay, that serves as a fair introduction, hopefully. Anything you two would like to say before we kick off?
I have a very interesting take.
Okay.
For this discussion today.
I bet you do. How about you, Waka? Anything you'd like to say before we kick things off?
Not that I can think of.
Sponsored by Trader Joe's, of course. Trader Joe's are gonna get that sponsorship
Yes,
for me.
Hopefully.
One day.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I had to put that in there. All right, we can get started then. And again, let us know at any point during the stream if audios are messed up so that we can get that fixed right away. All right, so let's talk about... first let's talk about what you wanted to talk about. I know you've got a lot on your mind. What do you have to say about what we're about to discuss here?
I think the current format, so what is it? First to three? No? Yeah, first to two.
First
okay,
to two.
let's use best of.
Okay,
not
sure.
Okay, best of three.
Yeah, that's easier. Best of three. That's just easier.
Best of three format, I think, does not allow for players to play. It doesn't give enough matches for players to play against each other, especially for the O tours, which is who I'm gonna argue for today.
Right.
The O tours don't get to play that much in our fighting game tournaments. They just go O2, and then I guess you could argue casuals afterwards, but it's different playing in a tournament and playing in casuals. Casual experience, like people are less serious, possibly, right? And then like if you're playing them in tournament, they might play differently, right? So you don't get the same experience if you play in tournament versus casual brackets. So that's I'll set the baseline for what I'm coming up with.
Yeah, that's a great foundation. Anything that you'd like to point out there, Waka?
Okay, I will say that it is funny when you mentioned 2 hours because I typically do better in shorter formats, and
Wait, can you repeat that? What'd you say?
Execute, like,
So, yeah,
doing the
I
2-0.
I personally don't like long sets. I do better in shorter sets. So I like to, like, it's true. It is harder for, like, newer players as well as players who are not as good at, like, I would say adapting. But I do agree with you that, like, people who, like, players who are, I won't say not as skilled, yeah, they don't have really that much time to play. And I've actually been that person who's been, to many times like, dang, I really wish I could, play more. And I agree with you on that one. But after getting, more involved with, Blaze Blue and playing Gyarados in that game, I realized that, like, let's just say with some exhibition matches I've been in, I would have cleanly, beat the other person, but since it was a long set, they started adapting after like the third game. And it's like, uh-oh. So, yeah, just me personally, I prefer shorter sets because it might sound pretty messed up, but it's like I don't want them to figure out within the short amount of time.
You don't want to get downloaded?
Correct, yes, I don't want to get downloaded. But, with that said, yeah, casual versus, like, a more competitive, like, tournaments, like, a more casual, in a small club, or just, like, more casual scene for the tournament, definitely way different than, like, a more competitive, like, scene, and therefore, players will play differently. Either it be they don't play as good because of the tournament nerves, or they play much better because they are now going to play more seriously. So that is definitely true that they will play differently. And for me personally, I tend to play worse in a competitive setting because tournament nerves tend to get to me. But I know there's some people who just play even better in tournaments than actually playing casually.
Right.
But, yeah.
No, I mean, that's a great perspective you brought. I think it's gonna be nice to have these contrasting perspectives of you two in here, because getting an idea of what the mix is of not only our community but just like probably the general perspective of the FGC on bracket environments, and whether you're able to condition people, or whether you're able to pull off a legitimate competitive run. I think a lot of people have very contrasting opinions on that. So, I think that's a valued perspective. There's a lot I want to touch on what both of you said. It's going to be pretty hard to synthesize everything, but we'll do our best here, right? What you mentioned about like playing long sets against people, and being afraid that they might catch on to my shenanigans, right?
Correct, yes.
I think that actually has a lot to do with fatigue, competitive fatigue, especially later on. You have to realize that playing first to 10 against someone versus, or I shouldn't say first to 10, let's say best of 21. Playing a best of 21 against someone is very different than playing a best of 3. Not just within the game, but like outside the game. We talk about a lot metagames, but metagame don't have to just do with like tiers or like strategies within the game. It has to also do with aspects of competing that transcend the particular fighting game. So whether
That's true. Like you're getting tired, you're getting fatigued by this long drawn out set that you're just not going to play as well as when you like either just started or somewhere in the middle of the set.
Yeah, exactly. The part of why a lot of people, especially people that are not like the highest level players, love these not like, because obviously it's just impractical to run a bracket that long where it's like first to 5 or sorry, best of 9, best of 21. You know, all of those are like.
I agree.
Yeah, those just take too long.
Even doing like first to 3 with Blaze Blue in a round format, that was the worst mistake I've ever made in my TMing career. It took forever.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, I understand. I completely understand. That's just not possible.
Yeah, it's in general, like there's a lot of tournaments where, okay, if we had just the best of the best here, like so closed circuit, right, and we can touch on that more later, then it's like, okay, maybe having like a long like, you know, best of 9 is probably fine. Like basically any series where it's like, okay, clearly the purpose of this tournament is to determine who's the best of the best, right? In that case where it's not, you know, open to everybody, then those longer sets might make more sense because you care a little bit more about like who's actually better. But for you know, the average fighting game player that's just going to Evo to have a good time for the most part, like at least you have to just look at the 99% of people, right, that go to Evo. The reason for going to Evo or any tournament like that is to have fun. They obviously probably have fun by trying to win or like competing, but I don't think that, you know, it's necessary to have like a best of 9 for that kind of fun to be tapped into. So
I agree.
yeah, like in order for things to be smooth, in order for things to move along, save time because of the scale of people that are at those tournaments, I think it makes sense to me to have first to 2. And obviously these things are all being said without regard to each individual game, which we can touch on more later. But, you know,
that's true, yes. There's very, you know, typical rule sets for each game. But continue, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, you're good. Yeah, this is an interactive discussion, so feel free to offer your thoughts at any point. You know, I'm monitoring chat as well as we go along. But
I'm monitoring chat as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say I see we have one viewer and I realize, oh wait, that's me.
Yeah, probably you. No, yeah, don't worry. People are busy this weekend, so they'll catch on to the episode later on. But yeah, a lot of, in my opinion, like a lot of the people that complain, like, oh, we should have best of 5 to determine who's actually better. Yeah, no, Retro just shaking his head. Like, yeah, it's silly. Like, obviously Strive is so fast that best of 3 doesn't feel like much happened. So those games are over in like 2 minutes, even if you have best of 3.
That's one exception that, like, that's the standard is best of 5 / first of 3.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think that shows more like how much of a party game. I don't want to get into Strive in this episode, but like, you know, that's not exactly the most. That's a very volatile game, right? It's not a very orderly game competitively. So
yeah. I will say, even though I am a Strive enjoyer, all I have to say is that there's a reason why of all the Guild Tier games, that particular one has the most either former or current Smash players. That's all I'll say. There's a reason why. That's all I have to say.
Man, you really had to go there, didn't you?
Yes,
Oh man. No, yeah. But you know, I personally think like best of 1 has a very charming appeal. Like obviously, whenever there's something like Toshinsai or previously SBO, which were very famous best examples of best of 1 games, you know, we have to preface this with the fact that these are team events. So best of 1 isn't like that bad for team events because, you know, you can circumvent the disadvantages of having best of 1 by just allowing your teammate to follow through with the conditioning or to introduce like new variables that confuse the rest of the opponent's team. But that's a whole other thing we can talk about as well. I'm personally a huge fan of, again, best of 1 for like not super competitive events, but I'm also the person that thinks that all of FGC's open tournaments are not really intended at determining who's the best. It's just that we use that narrative to add stakes and make it seem more important because we don't really have the same level of like, you know, grand culminations of the year like, you know, Worlds does for, or League does for Worlds, or Counter-Strike has for like the major. Like none of those exist in FGC, and we're trying to turn these events that were previously like community grassroots events into events that like want to be the culmination, but they end up just being like a showcase for the developers or sponsors more often than not, and then the other attraction being the fact that okay, you have all these good players that happen to show up too because Evo and brand name, right? Any thoughts on that? Either of you?
My thoughts are, I would love for there to actually be more closed circuit events for the FGC, because I would like to see like more of a like best of the best just competing in the tournament, just as like even just simply as even though I am a player of fighting games, but also as a spectator, that just seems really interesting to me. So I just wanted to add that I would personally would love to see more closed circuits happening here and there.
Yeah, I mean it's good to have the balance, right? Like again, having only open circuit events definitely drives the inherent competition. Like FGC is like inherently like very competitive, and one of the first like esports that at least came to be. But it's just that because we've still like kept a lot of the aspects and qualities of the FGC from way back that are kind of outdated nowadays in terms of
like the arcade days,
yeah,
grassroots arcade days, and everyone is kind of welcome to compete, sort of thing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and there's still a lot of the culture that was maintained from that, which is not a bad thing. But if we want to apply like events that are like okay, this whenever Bamco has the World Tour for Tekken, you always hear like people whispering, "Oh, will Knee get upset in like the pools or whatever early stage there is for those tournaments, right?" It's like, "Oh, will Knee get upset in those pools, or will Knee solidify his GOAT status, right?" But then there's always the asterisk like, "Oh, this player wasn't in attendance, so this victory wasn't as as major." Yeah, it wasn't as significant, exactly. Like, there's always the asterisk, and then Evo Japan was supposed to solve some of that, but mind you, Evo Japan's a great event for just watching like super high level play for the respective games, but it's still like a sour taste in the mouth when that it's being marketed this way, but then it's not actually this way, partially due to the fact that you're running a double elimination best of 3 bracket, to save time because there's so many people, and it's free to enter and all of that. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that we at least sold the viewers on like why this is such a expansive topic. Like there's plenty to touch on for simply best of 3, whether it's good for competing or good for having fun or good for saving time for TOs. But anything else before we kind of dive deeper into the next couple of topics?
Well, on the topic of like
sorry, continue.
On closed brackets, don't we already have that for fighting games like Capcom Cup? It's like it's not like a closed bracket, but it's like a league, right? Like if we're because we're talking about esports and we're comparing like other esports, those are like leagues, and those are fundamentally different than like a tournament, right? There is a tournament that exists, but that's only after like you play in the league and you like amass the ladder.
Right.
That's normally done. And I'm not sure like what you guys mean by like, oh yeah, there should be more closed tournaments. Like, you're talking about like in the league where like all the closed tournament, everyone who ascends the league and gets like top 32 in the league gets like that's the closed tournament, or do you saying like invitational closed tournaments where you like invite the top players like determined by I don't know tournament results or something?
Yeah, no, I mean that's a fair point you made. Like the way it's
definitely a fair point,
the way it's done in mainstream esports, you have like a couple tournaments throughout the tournament circuit, and then those top teams usually develop a lot of points so that okay, we can invite these teams with a certain amount of points to the invitational tournament. Mm-hmm. So I'd consider that closed circuit, right? But then there's the other side to it where you have these franchise leagues like LCS is right now, and then Counter-Strike there's Blast Pro Series, like it's all franchise. Mm-hmm. So basically these rich teams just buy in and they compete against themselves. That's super closed circuit, right? Okay. But there's still qualifiers for the next stages. If basically, even if you're franchised, you're not guaranteed to make like the finals or those like last tournaments where there's going to be good teams there.
Okay.
But you're right. Like you probably do need to have like both to make sure that you can actually get like the best out of having like actual closed circuit tournaments throughout the year. It's still complicated for fighting games because by inherently being like 1v1, there could potentially just be more people that compete for it, and you still have to deal with, okay, if we want to determine who's the best, which format do we do? Because double elimination isn't always going to be the best way. It saves time, I guess. But yeah, no, that's a fair point. Anything on that, Waka?
I was just going to say that I was thinking similar to what Retro says, either have a league and whoever competed the best throughout the duration of time, they receive an invitation to that event. That's kind of what I was thinking, how it would work out. And that's all I want to add.
Gotcha. Yeah. Funny, like, I'm going to make a proposal to you guys, and let me know how insane this sounds, or if at all. Let's say we had a semi-closed circuit event, so not really closed circuit, it's like more like a qualifying event for the final, which is closed circuit, I guess. You start the event by having open qualifiers, so anyone can sign up. That open qualifier is basically like a triple elimination. They market it as Swiss, but it's basically triple elimination where your first two matches are best of one in whatever game it is, and then any qualifying or eliminating match, meaning that match where you're about to be sent home or about to be sent to the next stage, is best of three or whatever applies to that game. So like for Stride, maybe best of five. But let's say it's best of one for all the other matches just to save time. Because, sometimes for like Dragon Ball, it takes too long. So, okay, best of one, save some time, right? How does that sound? Like if you have like less sets for earlier games, and then for qualifying or eliminating games, you have a bit longer sets. So like it doesn't have to exactly be best of one or three, but that kind of structure. Do you feel like that's a structure that allows for the goal of like elevating the apex of the competition to succeed, or do you feel like that's
that
a little whack?
Sounds really tough for me because I think first though, I said I'm an advocate for short sets. That's the one thing I don't think is all that good as a first to one for a fighting game, because that doesn't give time for any opponent to either warm up or adapt. So it might develop some false flags in a person's skill. Like on the first game, maybe the second game it would be pretty solid. But the first game, I think it would that'd be a false flag, and I think that's pretty. I don't think it's all that good of an idea. I would be down to do it myself. I would be down to actually compete in it. It sounds interesting, but I personally think although it would save time, I don't really think it would be a good representation of a person's skill. But I do ask the question, for the final game that's like a best of five, how much does that weigh in terms of scoring?
Oh, there's no scoring. You just advance to the next stage. So let's say there are 3 stages, like to at least make it a bit more concrete. You have the first stage, which is where everyone's in. Then by the time you go to the second stage, there are a couple of teams that are out from the first stage, right? And then the third stage is like, okay, if you qualify from the third stage, then you make it to the final tournament where it's like everyone that qualified to the third stage. That's also there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And let's also say that if you made it to the final stage the previous year or the previous time it was run, then you automatically make it to the second stage the next time.
Oh, gotcha. And let me make sure I'm just understanding this. Okay, for first stage, is that actually because this is sort of like Swiss. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this, and it might sound pretty stupid.
No, it's okay.
But is that just one game against your opponent, or is that like a separate tournament? Like, because I was under the impression that it's like technically there's 3 sets that you play, and it's like first to one for the first game, then second game is first to one as well, and then the last game it's a first to 3 / best of 3. Sorry, best of 5. Is that how it goes?
Yeah, no, you got that right. And
okay.
It's not too important whether it's like best of 1 or 3 exactly. It's just that it's a shorter set for those initial games, and then for elimination or qualifying games, it's going to be a longer set. It's like, if you're on the brink, right? It's like, okay, you have a better chance to prove yourself in this situation. we might have a little bit more time for it too. Now, one thing I kind of failed to take into account, right? Most FGC tournaments usually take a weekend, so like Saturday, Sunday, like what Slashback was, or if it's like a bigger tournament like CEO and Evo, those are usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and even sometimes I think Evo Japan might have had side tournaments even on Thursday, so that one took like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right?
Oh, that's
so,
crazy. Wow.
You know, if it was possible to have these stages held over separate weekends, I think this kind of thing is feasible, right? But something to keep in mind is that FGC is broke. Like, there's no money. So being able to run these stages...
Give more money in companies, please. Capcom, you have a lot of money.
Yeah, Capcom's
doing... Okay, true. All the money that Capcom's pouring into SS6 might dispel all of this, but it's still worth mentioning that the FGC has no money. How are we going to get a venue over multiple weekends for one event, right? Not to mention having, supporting the capacity and, the fans, the stream, and all of that. Of course, over the stages, like, there are going to be less people, but still has to be possible to support the number of people that would be there at the first stage. Anyway, this is a hypothetical. We can probably expand on this later, but there's a big reason why I bring it up now. Okay, and then...
It's an interesting hypothetical, though, and what's your thoughts on it, though, Retro H's hypothetical situation?
So I was thinking that... Because I know you're talking about, like, stages, but... Translating that to like fighting games, it would be like, if you're on like your eliminating run, like imagine you go all the way to your eliminating run. Every match you win, you're gonna have to play an eliminating run against somebody else.
Exactly.
So the person in losers ends up playing like 3 times or 5 times more matches than someone in winners bracket, which is a little suspect, right? You know, that's kind of like if the winners person is winning like first to ones, and then they get to like. What do you call it? The top 8. They've only played 8 games.
Yes.
Right, and then the person who's in losers, right, who's running all the way from losers against the top 8. They're playing like 30 games, 35 games. Yeah. I don't know. That sounds that's kind of. I don't know if that even saves time because
it doesn't.
The first 2 ones go by fast, but then all the eliminating rounds are like going to be a slog. So I'm not sure if the saving time actually happens.
Bingo.
From a round perspective. So I think it'd be funny seeing like the losers people go through the grind. Yeah, you lost. Yeah, you deserve it.
Yeah. Get punished.
You better get punished. Go through that grind.
Show you a lot of work. You gotta prove yourself that you're worthy to make it back on top. Put it in like Smash Bros. Because there's like more jank in Smash Bros. Like you lose against that Pac-Man player, or like some wacko. Who's wacko in fighting games? Like some Jacko player, like that one trick Jacko in Strive or something, or some niche character that you have no knowledge about because no one plays them, right?
Yeah,
it'd be funny. I was thinking like Platinum in Blaze Wheel.
Yeah, RNG character. Yeah. Okay, well, I think you hit the nail on the head, Retro H. Actually, it's funny because what I've described, I've kind of disguised it a little bit, but this is exactly the format for Counter-Strike's Major, and they do it. When you translate to Counter. Yeah. It's not a good thing. Don't be happy about it. This has been.
I'm more interested than happy. It's like I'm interested.
Yeah, I can talk about this a little bit. This is an FGC podcast, of course. I don't want to make this too much about CSGO.
CSGO is a fighting game.
It is a fighting game, true. But yeah, so CSGO's Major has a format, so there's qualifiers and then there's actual Major, right? The qualifiers in the early stage of the Major before like the playoffs, they have the same format where you play 2 best of 1s, and then if you're about to qualify for the next stage, then you play a best of 3, or if you're about to be eliminated, you also play best of 3. So you can literally get to the Major by winning 2 best of 1s and then winning 1 best of 3, right? So a lot of people are like, okay, what if this like awful team that would never win best of 3s consistently against stronger teams, what if they just win the best of 1? Well, that best of 1 ends up being worth like almost 2 best of 3s at that point, because as Retrage said, if you lose those initial games, you're already on the back foot and you have to win, let's say, after the 2 best of 1s, you have to win 3 best of 3s after that, compared to the teams that win 2 best of 1s, all they have to do is win 1 more best of 3, and they're already in the Major. So for fighting games, that would be like, I'm an Asuka player that just mashes buttons, but because it's Strive, you can still win, right? So you win against like what's up? Oh yeah. This is one of Retro Age's roommates that came in. If you're an Oscar player, like
my Retro Age roommates.
No.
I'm sure you can hear that, right, Waka?
I hear this, yeah.
Yeah. If you're like an Oscar player, right, like you can mash buttons. I'm sure you get a bunch of spells that might throw off a player that doesn't have knowledge on the character, right? And you could argue like, okay, if you're a good player, you should just win. You should just have the knowledge and everything. It'll never be a problem whether it's best of 1 or best of 3. But the issue with that is for a game like Strive, they made it such that you can very much win like legitimately, even in best of 1 or best of 3 scenarios, by not being like as well versed in the game or as good. So with a character like Asuka, if you win the best of 1, you've already sent perhaps that good player in a position where they have to win, let's say, a bunch of best of 3s against other players who are in the same position too, and are potentially good players as well. So if you continue win the 2 best of 1s, and then it's okay, all I have to do is win 1 more best of 3, and you manage to do that, then you can fluke your way into the upper echelons of these like high profile tournaments, which is, in my opinion, why the CSGO major has a lot of problems right now. But thankfully, that game's lifespan is ending, and we'll see CS2 in a couple of months. That was a bit of a tangent, of course, but I hope that puts it in perspective. Like these are real issues that.
It does, and now I understand the format much better. Thank you for giving that illustration.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and can you believe that a game with millions of dollars on the line has such an awful format like that? Like,
I'm surprised.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes fighting games have it good. Like, there's not much to envy about mainstream esports necessarily, with especially how much money is being lost. But before this becomes too much of an esports talk rather than a fighting game podcast, let's move on. We've got next Swiss systems versus single and double elimination. There's a lot of analogies, comparisons that can be made here. FGC has traditionally been double elimination for a long time, but there have been plenty of events that experiment with other formats. SBO, as I mentioned, has like a team style Pokemon format where if you win, you stay on. You lose, then you're done. And those are best of 1 in each head to head, but it's still like people still consider that like an amazing tournament because it's just fun to watch, even if it's like not always like okay, the best player wins. But sometimes you just have to be the master of the format. Other formats that FGC is that have been used in FGC. I think sometimes there used to be this channel called Top of 3-Man Cell that would run like World Cup format, which is basically think of like the World Cup group stage in soccer, where if you win you get 3 points, draws 1 point, losses 0 points. You do that and you just play a round robin against everybody, and then whoever has the most points at the end is like the winner, right? So that one, of course, sounds like a round robin, but the thing is, you're not playing like a best of 3. You're playing 4 games, so it's possible for you to tie in those 4 games. Like it's possible for there to be a 2-2, and then each of you just get 1 point, rather than like saying, okay, there has to be a winner for that. So those kind of formats are good for like showcasing a bit more than just like competing or being good in scrambles or exploiting volatility of the particular game. But do you guys think that FGC needs a bit more than just the dry double elimination first to 2 that we've been using for a long time now?
Are we comparing like Swiss? Are you saying that what about Swiss?
Yeah, okay. I did forget to mention Swiss, but Swiss is used in like card games typically, but those take a long time, especially with how many people are. Like basically, which format do you think is like the best, or like what are the pros and cons of each different format that could be used in FGC but just aren't being used because we stick so often with double elimination?
I don't think Swiss can be used because in FGC every match you play kind of matters,
right?
With respect to the tournament, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every match you play is like important for your placing in the tournament. But in Swiss, if you're already 0-4, there is 0% chance that you like make it into anywhere in the tournament, or like the top 8, the relevant spots of the tournament, right?
Right.
So that would actually, I think that would hurt like the tournament a lot because people would just, like in Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, card game tournaments,
Yeah.
people just drop, right?
Right.
And then even those people who stay, it's like kind of bad taste because they're already out of the tournament, and even then the people they're playing against who are also out of the tournament you could say that they're still playing in the competitive mindset as like practice. That mentality where you're already out, it's already over, right? So I don't think that would be very good for the FGC. I don't think Swiss would work unless it was like a league or a point system where like it actually carries over. So you do have to play every round is relevant.
Yeah.
So if every round is relevant for your placing, like in a macro system that's beyond just that tournament, I would think that Swiss would actually work because then you play it's more games for everybody. The point system actually matters, but then you have to have like everyone has to make an account or whatever. Everyone playing has to be part of that macro system, and it's a lot of work. I'm not sure how that would work, but for like a one instance thing, Swiss would never work, in my opinion.
And from the viewer's side, do you feel like there would be like just boredom and tiredness after those long Swiss rounds anyway, or do you feel like?
Well, the viewer would only be looking at top cut, right?
Yeah.
Or like the winner seed stuff. So it wouldn't matter for the viewers. For the viewers, they're only looking at the winnings, most of the time, right? I know that sometimes they play like the loser, but they're mostly looking at winners. So it doesn't. Viewer opinion doesn't really matter.
Doesn't matter. Okay. All right.
They're looking at the same thing. So either way, that's my thing.
Yeah. Got it. Walk, any thoughts?
Oh yeah, for me, very, very, very interesting points that you made, Bertrage, but I will say that Swiss, I think, gives the best play. I want to say it mixes what's good about round robin, where you have 4 games you can play in them for either practice or having a second chance at actually placing higher, and also not taking as long as round robin, since you're not battling everyone, you're just battling people who are roughly the same skill level as you based off of the points that each player has received, thus far. So it starts, it doesn't take as long, similar to, double elimination tourists really don't take too long, but for a huge, that's tricky because I personally really like Swiss, and I think it kind of mixes the best of both double elimination and round robin. But for it to use as a big tournament, I personally am not sure because it might end up taking longer than the tried and true double elimination. I think that Swiss is probably the best representation of how should I put this? The most skilled players, I guess you could say, if they make it this far and maybe do a quick Swiss and then it enters into a double elimination of some sort. But me personally, it might take too long in a large tournament setting. That's just my opinion.
Okay, what in your head, like, what makes you think it would take like longer, right? Okay, let's pretend we had so in like card game tournaments where they do Swiss, they have like a bunch of tables, right? Let's say they have like 200 tables. In fighting games, since the games are shorter, you obviously don't need 200 tables to be able to support a large Swiss tournament. But given that like fighting games are not literally 40-minute rounds like what Yu-Gi-Oh has, and other games have long rounds too. Like in your mind, what would make it like take longer to run Swiss?
I guess I could be wrong because personally I don't have too much knowledge running Swiss. I've only ever participated in Swiss and let the TOs handle what's going on with the Swiss back thing and stuff. But what I was thinking is like double elimination. That kind of weeds out a lot of not as good players, and since 2 sets, you're out. But for Swiss, it's going to be 4 games typically. Since you play, and also you need to make sure each player has successfully completed that round, and then check out with the TOs, calculate the score, and then distribute it, and it's like, okay, here's your next opponent. I was just thinking that might end up taking a bit longer than double elimination, in my opinion.
Okay, understood. Yeah. The way I see it, at least, is that, as Retrorage said, with the fact that there's going to be a lot of rounds that don't matter after a certain point, because let's say you have...
That's also another thing too, yes.
Yeah, let's say you have like 64 players, right, which is like considered a regional size. 64 players, if I can do math, is that 8 rounds?
8 rounds?
6 rounds, 5 rounds.
Of double elim? Or
6 rounds. No, Swiss. 64 players. 6 rounds. Yeah. So if you have 6 rounds of Swiss, for FGC that wouldn't take long at all. But then if you lose 2 rounds, you have a pretty, you'll be pretty. If you lose your first 2 rounds at least, it's almost like it's extremely highly likely that you won't top into like top 8 or top 6 or whatever FGC is nowadays, because all those other 4 rounds you're going to be facing other people that also bombed out of their first 2 rounds, which means if you win against them,
correct, yeah.
your wins are not going to be worth as much as people that win against people that were 2-0 going into the 3rd round, right? It's an awkward situation, because on the one hand it's like, okay, yeah, you can play more and you won't be out of the tournament. On the other hand, you are basically out of the tournament if you are trying to finish high, like if you're trying to finish like.
That's true though. At that point, the only reason to be playing is either you still enjoy playing, or for practice at that point. Because you're definitely not going to make it to like top 10 or top 8.
In my opinion, it's essentially casuals. It's like the same as casuals. If you're playing double elim and you got eliminated and you wanted to play more games, but once you go like 0-2 in Swiss, you're just playing casuals.
I mean, but for 64 players, what makes it different, right? I guess 64 players is just not big enough to make Swiss worth it. So maybe it's like, okay, Swiss is better when you have at least this number of players, and then otherwise double elimination. Because double elimination, if you go 0-2, right, you're done at 0-2. And for 64 players, the difference is hard to notice, right? But for like, let's say 1,000 players, if you go 0-2 and 1,000 players, then it's gonna feel bad, because if you went 0-2, or sorry, if you were 0-2 going into round 2 of an 1,000 player Swiss bracket, you can still top. Like, it's very much possible. You have plenty of rounds to still get there. Obviously, it's gonna require like a very solid string of wins.
Can I inject something?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I will say that this is just me personally. When I was getting better in, let's say, Blaze Blue, that some of the Swiss tournaments that I entered in, I didn't win any of them, but I eventually did make pretty high placements. But when I was first starting out, it was like, me personally, it just felt good seeing, I did, I placed somewhere in the middle rather than at the bottom, and it was because of those extra games I was actually able to get in. So, the cumulative score was going to be higher than you see, you got 2-0 twice. So I just wanted to inject that as well, that mentally speaking, it could have a positive impact on someone.
No, I guess you're right though. Yeah, like saying I went 4-2 is much better than saying I went 0-2 and then like casuals. Right.
Correct, yes.
But
I think double elim makes it so that people don't play fighting games faster, And I think that's actually a positive, because,
now you're talking.
You go to Evo, right? And you're like, I'm 0-2. You have so much free time to do whatever you want at Evo. That's like amazing, right? You could play fighting games, but you could also like go around, do whatever other things they have, play a different game. Like, there's so many things you could do once you stop playing fighting games. And I think, you know what? Maybe getting out of the tournament ain't so bad after all. There's like hidden positives, you know. So Swiss, you know, like making people stay. That's a little suspect, you know. Like for the people who truly want to, I'm sure they could, but I'd rather be doing something else. You know, give me my O2 and leave. You know.
Okay. You know what? No, Retro just saying that from a perspective of, you know, a not meta player, right? So he doesn't like in fighting games. You wouldn't necessarily play a top tier. That would be equivalent lingo in that gaming sphere. But you know what? Like if we're talking about Evo, then of course you're going there for fun if you're not like a top player. But again, for these invitationals, playing out the rest of it does impact your placing, and I guess does impact your clout afterwards, because people are going to see like, oh, Daigo, like if Daigo decided, all right, I'm not going to play after I go X2 and it's 64% invitational. Yeah, no, people are going to look at that a little bit suspiciously, right? Like, oh, Daigo, you gave up. But
there's nothing to give up. It's already lost.
Yeah, but,
there's nothing to give up.
Like you should be
unless it was a league, there's nothing to give up.
I guess. His status on the internet.
Oh, and also in Swiss, you have to deal with people like dropping and stuff.
Yeah.
And so there's that aspect that might slow it down a little bit.
I mean, people DQ all the time in double M though, so.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, like
but then you just let it run, and if the person doesn't show up, they just lose. Right?
Yeah.
So I guess that's the same thing in Swiss, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess what we've concluded here is that Swiss and double elim, for at least our intensive purposes, are the same. Especially if it's like a regional level event and not a major level open event where there's like 1,000 players. And to be honest, we don't even see 1,000 players for a lot of games. It's like really only Strive and SF5. SF5 might have hit 1,000 players in one of the bigger tournaments some time ago, but it's been a while since then even. And I think Tekken these days, despite how popular it is still, and the fact that it just never seems to go away, it's still getting like 700 players only. So yeah, I don't know.
Wait. Sorry, just to go back a little bit. Do
Yeah.
people actually drop in double elim? Like they people only drop if they like have to drop, or there's something more precedent happening.
Yeah.
People usually don't drop in double elim.
They don't.
I think.
But that's because like there's usually like okay, they drop if they're or they DQ if there's like another game that conflicts.
Oh, okay,
like so, let's say they have to go to their Tatsunoko bracket while the Primal Reach bracket is happening. Then of course they're gonna DQ from that. It's sad though. DQing from a fighting game set feels bad still, especially in double M, because it's such a short like match. It's like usually 5 minutes or 10 minutes, right, to finish a best of 3. So it's not the same as like okay, if you played a Swiss tournament of CS:GO, like all of them best of 3s, obviously you're gonna like not bother with the rest of it. It just takes too much time, but and that's the same could be said for Yu-Gi-Oh, because Yu-Gi-Oh is 40-minute rounds. So yeah, I mean, Swiss maybe there's a bit more to think about for that one. It's not necessarily something we should switch over to necessarily, but I want to bring in another format that I think Saino, if he eventually watches this, is going to appreciate that I brought this up. What do you guys think of the ladder format? Like, this is the CBVL has a format similar to ladder, but what do you guys think of ladder? Like, obviously online is easier to do than offline, but just any thoughts on that?
Can I just quickly inject one thing on the previous topic?
Okay,
Swiss?
go for it. Yeah, go for it.
I will say that Swiss tournaments, although I think it's questionable for a bigger tournaments like Evo or like Combo Breaker, which just happened. It's either I think it's currently still happening. Combo Breaker. I think it's probably should adopt that. But I will say for like lower level, like intermediate and beginner tournaments, it is incredibly good for those, and just simply for practice. So I just wanted to throw that out there for at least for fighting games. I believe it's very, very good for intermediate and beginner level kind of tournaments. You get more games in there. You feel good about not being 2-0'd, and you're able to consistently get tournament practice more easily in those formats. I know when I was starting out, it helped me a lot. I just wanted to throw that out there before we, talk about ladders.
No, I mean that's a great point actually. Yeah, that I think that ties into ladders pretty well, actually. So it's not a problem at all. Would you say the same for ladder? Because ladder you can stay in as long as you want.
I would say yes. I
Yeah.
would say the same for ladders. I personally, I'm sorry, Boardman, if you're watching. I'm sorry, but I've actually never entered into ladder tournaments, unfortunately. But it looks like it works wonders for getting more games in practice.
Do you think ladder cutting to top 8 only after the time limit is a nice way of filling in the gaps that Swiss might have had? Because Swiss, you have to wait out the entirety of the rounds, but then ladder you can just say, all right, this is a hard time limit. We're not going to run the tournament any longer than this. Once you've completed all your matches that you'd like to do after the ladder finishes at this time, then we're doing the top cut. Do you feel like that's a nice compromise for fixing the issues that Swiss has potentially?
I think it's pretty good, yes.
Retrage?
No, ladder would be amazing. I think actually for running, because then you could. You're given a list of all the. Okay, wait. Let me remind myself how ladder works.
Right.
It's like you're given a list of all the players you need to play against, right, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and then depending on whether you're winning or lose, you go up the ladder, down the ladder,
Okay.
or is it that your wins at the beginning affect your matchups later?
Yeah, we can talk about it. So I guess we should clarify. There's like Cyano's ladder, which is CBBL's format, and then there's the Run It FGC ladder that CLG was doing before they went under. CLG's ladder is run through Smash.gg, so it uses their infrastructure. Basically, all the players enter the ladder, like they sign up for it, and then once the ladder's about to start, you have to say, I want to join the queue. And then it just does the matchmaking algorithm, and then pairs you with someone that is also joined the queue, and then you play against them, record the result. Then after you want to play again, you just join the queue again, and you'll be paired with whoever's also in the queue. Okay. I think it prioritizes people that are around the same record as you, but it's not guaranteed, so it's not like Swiss in that regard. And then Cyano CBBL, it's a little different because he does have like a Swiss style pairing, but it tries to give you a list of. So let me just explain from the beginning. Basically, after you sign up, you're given a list of players that you can play against, and if you play against these players, then they'll be ranked. You can play against other players that are not on your list, but they won't be ranked matches. Okay. If you play against that player, then it'll be calculated into your Glico points and all of that. And obviously, wins against strong players that have a good Glico rating will help you increase your rating at the end of the season. But the main distinction for that is that you're always paired with players that are slightly above you, slightly below you, and at your level. So there's like a good distribution of it. You have like 2 players in your potential match that you can play that are like above your skill level. I think there's like a couple below, and then 5 or so that are at your skill level. So you could decide to play against no one that's above you or below. You could play everyone at your skill level, and then your Glico points might not necessarily increase as much, but because it like naturally integrates the Glico algorithm, I think that does make it a bit easier to like be natural, like and not have to worry about the issues. But I guess it's a distinction of like whether it's asynchronous, like or you set everything to happen all at the same time frame. Waka, do you actually like ladder more, or do you like CBBL where it's like over a longer period of time and asynchronous?
Honestly, since I never participated in a traditional ladder format, I actually can't say, so I don't have any sort of opinion on it, but I will say that the CBBL format I think is a very, very, very good format. Mm-hmm. So I'll actually just default to say I think that I like that format more, only because I've never experienced a traditional ladder before, if that makes sense.
Oh no, I'm sure Cyano would be greatly enjoyed to hear that.
But it's really good. Like, shout out to Cyano for putting on the CBBL, and I'm sorry I didn't do much with the Rev 2 league, but I kind of haven't really been in the fighting mood.
Hey, at least you're signing up, right? Don't look at me. I've never signed up for CCU. Sorry, but I ain't trying to play fighting games.
No, yeah, CBBL is awesome for people that just want to get reps in whatever fighting game. I actually the only season I played proper in was Blaze Blue, the first season. I signed up for the 4th season, which was plus R, but I just played it super casually. That game's a party game, but in a good way, like affectionately a party game. Anyway, I think we've actually reached some profound conclusions here that ladder can do a lot to fix potentially a lot of the issues that come with double elimination or Swiss or whatnot.
I feel like it would only work online though. Like it wouldn't work in person.
Do you think it can be adjusted to
In
work
person? No, I don't think so.
How would it work in person? You
Yeah.
got a point there.
It's tricky, right? Because you have to get people to sign up as usual, but then you have to find a way to get pairings that would be considered like, okay, this is a high pairing, this is a low pairing, this is a
It'd be equivalent to Swiss, like
yeah,
essentially at that point.
but that's why we use Glico to seed it,
Yeah.
basically. So I think for it to work in person, you still need Glico or some robust rating algorithm, like an ELO or whatever. But yeah, it's difficult, right? Because even in person, setting the hard limit on the time, that like naturally in person, you have to be running around to setups to find the people that you're trying to play against, and that could be a hassle of its own. For Boardman, like when I asked him a little bit about CLG Run It Ladder, he said it was very hands off. He didn't really need to do much except for tell people that didn't know how to read. So that's easy enough. But no, I mean that's what he said. Those are his words. So I'm sure that a lot of complication would still come running it in person, finding out who's actually the person that's on Smash.gg. Like if the tag matches what you'd be calling them out as, and whether you can sit down on the setup quickly enough to get matches in rapid succession. But I feel like if those issues can be like ironed out, if that can be figured out, I feel like ladder would be the ideal format for like people to get a lot of games in, like just to have fun casually, and still determine like who's the good player. It's still possible to kind of farm lower ranking players in ladder, but as long as you have like good software, I guess, then that can be avoided. So who knows? Anything else, you guys?
No. I would like to talk about the format I'd like to see.
Okay, let's hear it.
All right. Here's my amazing suggestion. It's a little harder to do initially, but it, in my opinion, would be the best format.
Okay.
It is quadruple elimination.
No.
First of one until top cut.
Okay.
And so here's the logic. In this quadruple elimination, because it's still elimination, every game counts. So you're not gonna like, oh, Swiss, I'm gonna drop once I go 0-2.
Right.
Now you always have a chance to win, even if you're 0-3.
Right.
You go 0-4, and it might sound bad, but in this case, before with double elim, you go 0-2, you only get to play against two people.
Shoot, Waka's not hearing us.
Oh.
Wait, Waka, how soon did you leave? When did you leave? Are you there?
Oh, man's internet died.
Well, okay, continue. The VOD is still picking up your audio, so.
Yeah, so quadruple elimination, first to one.
Can you go back to explain your quadruple elimination again?
It's my idea is quadruple elimination, first to one, right? And so I'm gonna compare it to the standard double elimination, first to three, right? So in double elimination, first to three, you lose against two people, and it feels worse because you lost to them in like 2 rounds in a row, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, oh crap, I'm just worse, versus with the first to one match, you can be like, use character, it's like you don't get that much damage to your own ego, right? You can say, first to one, I didn't have time to adapt, right? So. And then you only play against two people. That's only 2 matches, like 2 matchups that you get to like learn and feel, right? You don't get to see that many players. Like, I mean, I guess if you like spectate, you get to see players, but you don't actually get to play against them, right? So this quadruple elimination lets you play against more people, more characters. You have more to think about. So before, when you go 0-2, you're like, I'm think about the 2 matches that I just lost to. Yeah. Now you can think of the 4 matches you just lost to and the characters that like you lost to against, right? It's good for the labbing in your mind, right? You get to play against different styles. There's more to learn when you play against different people and more matches. And these matches are all important because you still have a chance to win even if you're 0-3, right?
That's true.
And then not only that, the people who are winning get to play more matches too. And you guys might be saying, oh, 1st to 1, that lets all the people who like kind of cheese you, win. But those people who are winning in the 1st to 1 will play against other cheese people.
Right.
The percentage chance is increased for them. So you might saying, oh yeah, I lost to a cheese person. They're going to lose to a cheese person as well eventually, right? So it's all the same. And then when they go to loser's bracket, they might see the person they cheesed against. And then the person who has that first initial loss against them will now know.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
We talk about adaptation. You say, oh, 1st to 1, there's no adaptation. Wrong. There is. You'll see the people you lose, like who are in the bracket, they'll lose and they'll come down and you might see them again. And that's where the adaptation comes. You know what I'm saying? So you not only do you have to have good gameplay like already at hand to like actually win the bracket, you have to be able to adapt to not the match you just lost, but maybe a match you lost to like 5 matches ago, right? So it's like fermenting adaptation. You don't adapt immediately. You adapt like later when you see the person again. And so when I said that initially it'd be hard, in double elim, you have to have like all the setups being run at like the first 2 matches, right? Because then no one's out yet. So in this quadruple elimination, it might be a little harder at the very beginning because you have to run all the setups 4 times. But it's better because in a 1st to 1, the time variance is very small because it's a 1st to 1. So in like Dragon Ball, you have a best of 3. It could end in 2 minutes or it could end in 15 minutes, right? And that's a big problem. That time variance is like a very big problem for TOing. But it's a 1st to 1.
So
it's either 60 seconds or 300 seconds, right? So you can hard call the time because you don't have to wait for like rematch, like the in-betweens. It's one match. You start at the same time, it will end at the same time.
Right.
So even though the first 4, like running all the setups for the first 4 matches, you might sound really hard. It's actually way easier in the long run because the time variance is very small. So it's actually easier to TO, in my opinion, because you can make the hard call-outs on time in the first 4 matches. And then, the time variance after that, there's less players, so it matters less.
Yeah,
But
I think
there's my pitch for quadruple elimination 1st to 1. But, it's not 1st to 1 all the time. Once you get top cut, then you play like the 1st to 3s. Right?
Yeah, because people will care about who's better.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, Walker, sorry. Really quick, I think what Favre said was like a beautiful way of putting it. He said it sounds like the BOGO sport of tournament format, and I love it. And I think that is like the best way to sum it up. Walker, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I feel like the format seems a little jank, but in all the best ways possible. And honestly, a lot of the points that you made, I can't really argue against. I still feel like it might be hard to coordinate with TOing, but other than that, it sounds like a pretty hilarious, like, not gonna lie, it seems like it might be pretty good, but like a pretty good format, but at the same time, it sounds incredibly brutal.
Brutal? What do you mean? You gotta play against 4 people. Like, if you're going 0-4, that's like the minimum requirement, right? You against 4 people, and if you lost against all 4 of them, I don't think you can say, oh yeah, I got cheesed 4 times by 4 like non-meta picks, right? Ain't no way, dude. You're about to run into some meta.
In like a couple of them, but then again, you have so many opportunities to make it back on top.
Wait, okay, Walker, I'm surprised you're not in agreement with this format though, because don't you favor shorter sets, like where you don't want them to figure you out, like so you
I
just.
do. I actually do favor shorter sets, and that's part of the appeal of this format to me. But at the same time, like, I like 1st to 2 because that gives me a little time to warm up, if that makes sense. But 1st to 1. That seems kind of brutal, in my opinion, and then you are thrown into a whole new opponent with a whole new character, and that just seems really different. Like, I know I like to say that, I like to run away with, like, getting 2 games off them and then I'm off to the next opponent, but just doing 1st to 1, that just sounds so...
Okay, think about it like this. You say it's brutal from the perspective of like Okay, how about this? For like a Daigo in this, let's pretend Daigo is playing in this format, right? And you see him lose a 1-1 against somebody, then you're like, oh my
Daigo lost.
This person is better than Daigo, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually more brutal for top players,
Right.
which I'm okay with, you know? The brutality for lower players, exactly, which is totally okay, because the person who cheeses, right, they still have to play the long sets later on if they get there. That's even if they get there. I don't think you could cheese a person like Daigo, but it's there's a greater percentage chance of that happening in a 1-1, right? So in my opinion, I think it's more brutal for actual pro players who have like what do you call it?
Stakes on the line,
Or like prestige, or like, you know, they're good. You're a good player. They're 0-2 in this 1-1 quad. You win.
I feel like it's more brutal, like intermediate and above, because I'm looking at this. It's like, yeah, this seems kind of.
No, yeah.
Like I've been cheesed before by some characters I'm not too familiar with, but I needed that one game to adjust. So I'm kind of in danger.
No, you don't. You don't need any games to adjust. This means you just go full throttle from game 1. And if you mess up, okay, you still have 3. You still have a cushion of 3 games that you can potentially lose.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true. That's the part that's like, dang, I can't say it's an unbalanced format. That's what I'm trying to say as well. It's like you have so many cushions for it as well. You need to just play better from the get-go. If that makes sense.
You need to play your game plan.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Where you have to stop thinking about your opponent's game plan, completely run your own game plan, and try to dominate your game plan versus your opponent's game plan.
Okay, that would change how people pick characters for the game.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It would just be, there's so much variance that I think it would be amazing. It'd be more fun. I'd see more people. You know, I'd go 0-4 and I'd be more okay with it because I played it 4 people and I'm like, oh, you know, there's a lot to think about, right? Versus you play against 2 people, you're just kind of molding. You're like, yeah, you know, not as fun.
Honestly, I agree with you that I think it would be an amazing format. Like, don't get me wrong, I love this idea. I love this format idea, and I kind of hope that, I don't know, one of the people around, like, the people who host, tournaments here and there in the various, collegiate scenes, they'll adopt this format as an experiment for one tournament.
Yeah, it needs to be tried.
Yeah,
don't knock it till you try it. You know, I want to see Capcom run it at least one time. I'd be very happy.
No, I think it would be cool to give that format a shot. Interestingly, I think for Strive we still have issues. It would actually expose the good games for the bad ones, right? Because I mean,
oh, dude, you could finish a Strive tournament in like an hour.
yeah.
Just have the format, every match be like 5 minutes between rounds, and then you could go through 20 rounds in 1 hour. That's crazy.
Okay, the bad part about that, dude, is that like a Strive 1-1 would take like a minute.
Yeah, you can go. Dude, tournaments would be so bad. Yeah. You could run 5 Strive tournaments in 1 day.
Bro.
Give people multiple chances.
Okay, actually, how about this? So I have an amendment to Retro Ages format. What if we had the what's it called? The lower in
pools?
No, not pools. So like after you get eliminated from the tournament, there's like this revenge bracket. I'm not sure what they call it in FGC. But it's like, think about like the lower bracket where all of the people that bombed out are going to compete against each other. The same format though. So like at least there's something to do, like if you want to continue playing. Like, so I guess if you add that to the format, it would make it feel less bad that, okay, I went 0-4 and just lost to Cheese.
And then you're going to go 0-8.
0-4 again, yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I think that would be cool. You know, if Daigo finds his way in there and wins it, it's not going to look as good as it might seem because he's going to be pitted among the other people that bombed out. And then if you're the best among the worst, like people won't have much of a liking to that compared to being the worst among the best, you know. So like if you went like, I mean I don't know how many rounds there would be. It depends on the number of people, obviously. But let's say you went like 4-4. To me that like if you went 4-4 in the upper. Like the main bracket, that's much better to me than like winning the bomb out bracket, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean,
that's my suggestion.
yeah. I mean, that's cool. I think that's cool. It's I mean, all we're really doing is just unrolling the double elimination bracket without traditionally like best of 3 the whole way. And I think for a number of games this would actually work out. Like it probably won't work out so well for Marvel 3, for Strive, for Dive Kick. Obviously, it doesn't work unless you make it. Or I know Dive Kick will work if you make it like 5 rounds in game, but.
Oh yeah, for the quicker games, yeah, probably you could probably still do a first to 3 with quad elim.
Well, I mean that would still expose the bad games for the good ones. So.
Oh yeah, Marvel versus Capcom. Now that you bring that up, that's like a one-touch game.
Yeah, it is.
Like you play one neutral interaction, and you know, as long as you're a competent player, competent enough,
right.
You'll capitalize off it like completely.
Yeah.
Is it possible for like a teammate like Marvel vs. Capcom 3? Can you make that 2 rounds? Is it possible to make it 2 rounds? If you can, then that could work.
No, it's not possible.
Oh dang. Okay.
Unfortunately, yeah. Well, that was a great deal on formats. Anything else, you guys, on that?
Yeah, did you guys come up with any formats before coming here?
Yeah, I mean, I thought of the top of 3-man cell format, how it could be like expanded upon. All it really is like just making it like rather than World Cup where it's like individuals in that round robin, like make it team wise, so your points go to your school's team. Basically, I can explain the format that was going to be for the KO15 XBX, right? Or the not XBX, but exhibition. So it was going to be UCI, CBP, and UCLA. I think there were going to be 3 players from each of those schools competing, and we would do a double round robin. So basically, each player. Wait, hold on. Am I saying this right? Yeah, so double round robin. So each player would face each other twice, and each individual set would be just 2 games. Not a first to 2, not a first to 3, not a best of whatever. Literally just 2 games. So if you win, if you win 1 and your opponent wins 1, it's a draw. If you don't win any, then it's a loss. And then if you win both, then obviously it's a solidified win, right? That way, there's like, I mean, obviously with 2 games, ordinarily there's not a lot of variance, but because it's going to a point total for your school, and there's going to be a tiebreaker among, like basically when you do the double round robin, there's going to naturally be a lot of tie breaking. I feel like that creates a lot of variance to allow for people to still see that, okay, this school or this scene is the best. So if you want to like make a team tournament, I think a good way to do it is not to have, well, I mean, it obviously depends, right? Because it's harder to do if you have like a 20v20, but if it's a team tournament where there's multiple like doubles teams entering, I think a good way to do it is to have some kind of round robin where you don't play a full like best of set. Instead, you just play 2 games or some way where ties are allowed, and then just allowed to contribute to the point total for your team. And that way, everyone still gets to play the same amount because you're guaranteed 2 games. It's not like, oh, I lost my best of 1, therefore I'm out, and then now I have to let my other team carry. People can still carry for this format, obviously. Like you can win all your games and just be the best out of everyone in that tournament, and probably still not win because the rest of your members were slacking or something. I don't know how that would be possible.
They're trying.
Yeah. I mean, no, they were feeding. Yeah, they were griefing or something. You know, but I mean, that still allows for the banter to be possible. I mean, if you want to bring over the team format to FGC, I think that's the way to do it. Basically, is what I'm saying.
Bring in toxicity.
Yeah, I want to bring in toxicity. Exactly. I mean, hey, we're not talking about Gundam or Dissidia here. We're just talking about a way to involve, team play in fighting games.
Yeah, team play would be very nice. I always love crew battles and stuff, so I'd like to see that, to be honest. Like, in some form, in like Evo or something.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
I mean, I think if that format's brought over, as long as it's obviously not too many people on a team, like if it's like 3 or 4 at most, I think it's fine. But if once it becomes like 10, then that's where it's not as easy.
Oh, that'd be such a fun party game at Evo.
Yeah.
Like you split all the participants into like 4 groups of like with some random team name, and then they all get into smaller pairs inside those groups and play to like amass the most points for their team, and they all get an award.
Yes, exactly.
At Evo. That'd be so funny.
Yeah.
Oh crap.
And you can still easily find out who's the best team. Obviously, you won't find out who the best individual player is, but when you know what you're getting into when you make team formats for FGC, because at the end of the day, people like seeing who the best scene is. And oftentimes that gets a bit clouded when you have one extremely good player who's far above the rest, and then everyone else is like average, but then isn't able to beat that one player. That actually is what happened several times with our exhibitions. We had, like, I would say a good chunk of good players from one school, but then because the best player was from a school where they were just the best compared to everyone else, but then the rest of their school was like not very good, they were able to make it seem like they were the best scene. And that's also seen in CBBL where, I mean, not for KY15 season, but anytime there's one very good player from a school and that player finishes first, they're always going to be ranked like, okay, this is the best performing school, even though there's only just that one player. And obviously you can't take average because that makes it really unfair to that one player. But if you do points, then I think that's a fair way to do it. Thoughts on that, Walker? Or it's just amusing. It's not like a...
Yeah, you'd be able to see who's the best like region and like the best player at the same time. Because you can see the individual score and the team score.
Team scores, exactly.
True, yeah. I think, that could work out. And it's funny, I've been actually brewing in my mind like how you could make a good team format for a fighting game, and I think that would work. I think it can make it work.
Wait. Let's talk about. I don't. Do you have more topics?
No. Oh, I have a lot we can talk about. Don't worry. Feel free to go.
But I think we should talk about the difference between first to one, first to. Not best of one, best of three, best of five.
Yes.
Like, okay, first what are your guys' preferences? What do you like most? Like, best of one, best of three.
Man, I've been able to be silent this whole time about it. Now I guess I have to say something. So, as you know, clearly as you guys know, a guy doesn't play fighting games. I personally am very content with best of three. I think best of three is perfect. It's a balance of show what you know, and also adapt to make quick adaptations to what your opponent has shown so far. Obviously, when it becomes big sets like best of 9 or even best of 21, that's where it starts to become more about not necessarily who's better, but who just has more stamina. Because even if you're better, sometimes you just get tired, either your hands are tired or your mind is tired of thinking, and the other player just starts to pull ahead maybe because they're thinking a little less about what they have to do, right? I think those, like, basically there's, as it goes with a lot of things, there's like a bell curve where you can figure out who's the best after like a certain amount of sets played. So maybe like, I think best of 5 is kind of the sweet spot for that. In basketball, they do best of 7 for the playoffs, and I personally don't think that's always good for determining who's the best, because people get injured, and then when injuries happen, the team is going to be handicapped, and they might not play as they were able to in previous games of that series or previous games in the playoffs. So I think best of 7 can get draining, especially to watch. But people think, like, because of the way like home games and home advantage works in basketball, like best of 7 is kind of good for that specific sport. Best of 5 kind of hurts the team that doesn't have home advantage. So that there's like always pros and cons, right? But I think for fighting games, best of 3 is fine.
Waka, what do you think?
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
I agree with Krushi that best of 3 I think is the best format for fighting games, and pretty much what Krushi said is what I was going to say, but I will also add to, this is just me personally, and I already mentioned it before, but, after game 3 or 4, that's usually when people start figuring out what I'm doing. So I'm a little bit biased with, like, don't want the game to get, go on too long.
You don't want them to figure out the ninja secrets.
Exactly. But yeah, everything that you said, gives them time to adapt. Meanwhile, it's, not too long. It won't cause, fatigue to the players. So yeah, I agree as well. First 2 / best of 3 is the best format.
Okay, I should clarify, when I was like playing fighting games with the more competitive mindset, the characters I played, especially like Blaze is a good example. The characters I played were good in best of 3 because like they don't really need to condition the opponent. Like all you really do is just run your stuff, right? And they can't deal with it, then you win. And it's a lot of damage. It's quick. it transitions into itself. This was all talked about a bit more in the game theory episode, but that obviously gives like me a best of 3 advantage. If the set goes longer, the advantage just doesn't necessarily dissipate, but it gives the opponent more time to think about, why did I get hit here? Like naturally it just, naturally it gives them more opportunities to guess correctly. So I don't know. I mean,
wait. When we talk about best of 3, let's
Okay.
go. I'm gonna get you guys on a technicality.
okay.
What actually you're saying is a best of 11 because there's already a best of 3 fundamentally built into fighting game matches.
Oh
right?
no, what is this?
Well, I figured it
3
was
touch?
like-
No, because in a
Or
fighting game
rounds.
in like Street Fighter, you have to play 3 rounds to
Oh, okay,
actually
fine.
win 1 round. So
Fine.
technically, you're already playing a
course.
best of 3.
Of course you're gonna
Right?
go there.
Of course I am going to go there because we're talking about like, best of 3 is the best. We're already playing a best of 3 in our best of 1. And I like best of 1.
Okay.
I'm going to preface that with best of 1. We're already playing a best of 3 in our best of 1. If you can't adapt in our one best of 3 game, I'm sorry, that's an L for
All right.
you.
No. I cannot allow this technicality to be got away with.
But you guys are talking about best of 3 is the perfect. We're playing. That's the best of 1. You guys are describing a best of 3 as like the perfect. You already play that in the best of 1, right?
Okay.
So everything you've extrapolated for the best of 3 can be applied to a best of 1 because a best of 1 is a best of 3.
Okay, the difference is you guys see this game for the DS system. It's called Bleach Dark Souls. Okay, this game is best of 1 in game, and people still play best of 3. So I don't think what you're saying is true. Like the game, you can't change the best of rounds like within this game, right? So the game is like already balanced around that.
Okay,
For
I
Blaze
see.
Blue, it's balanced around best of 3. Your burst carries over between rounds, which is a
I
big deal.
see. I
For
see.
Strive, I think your burst also carries between rounds. Is that right, Waka?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and how fast that game is,
I think I actually does burst here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the burst
yes.
level, like it doesn't refresh after the round's over.
No, I
so.
don't think it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, like it makes a big difference whether you have 3 rounds in game or not. And then the fact that 3D fighters usually are best of 5, honestly, that they could be best of 1, right? Like if we want to take Retro Rage as technicality, yeah. I mean, those could be best of 1 because there's nothing that carries over between rounds. And if you got hit by the low that many times, you deserved it. Like if Arslan lost to one Akuma corner carry combo that took 80% of his health, he deserved it. So I mean, yeah, you're right. We should just have best of 1 in game. Which really means you guys should just play Bleach Dark Souls because it has all of that already in place.
Indeed. Okay, think about it like this: in a best of
That is
3.
on my radar. I should play.
In a best of 3, right? You can't really remember like the entire match, right? But I'm sure in a best of 1 you probably could, right? So I feel like if you're playing a best of 3, you forget more things, right? And then I don't know, unless you have the recording, I guess that'd be
Yeah.
okay, so you can look over the recording. But best of 1 keeps the things that just happened like fresh in your mind, So if you just lost, you're like, dang, you can remember every interaction because it's a best of 1, right? So,
Right.
there's less things to remember. I don't know. Would it help the player more to reflect on their quick loss than to play more games? I'm not sure.
No, yeah, this is complicated. I don't know if devs really take that into account because they just kind of go with the best of 3 without much thought into it and move on. I do think Strive had it took a big risk by having the game be designed the way it was because I think they just kind of forced the best of 3 rounds in game naturally and then expected people to just adjust the set length as needed or as the TOs saw fit. But what they really should have done was just made the in-game rounds first to 3 rounds and then still have standard tournament set be best of 3.
Okay, what's going against best of 5 in you guys' opinion?
So I think best of 5 would best of 5 is probably fine like in the long run, but it's just long enough where you could probably predict entire tournament brackets. Like there's like nothing interesting. Like like when everything happens according to the script, it's like not as interesting. Like, okay, I'll say this. Shall I Win at Evo Japan was still impressive, despite it being like very predictable, because like it was not easy. Like there were definitely opponents along the way that made it hard for him, like Lashar and I think ET a little bit, but even those players kind of got washed. Still, it wasn't like KOF first to twos are pretty long. KOF best of threes are pretty long, because you have 3 characters to eliminate. But it was still like entertaining, right? Like it wasn't like, even though it was predictable, it wasn't like, this is so predictable that it's like boring. But obviously, if KOF for best of 5, like I've seen it in CBBL, like best of 5 for KOF takes a long time. Like it takes like almost 25 minutes for the maximum amount of games. I think it's just long enough where the better player is probably gonna win anyway. Like it won't make much of a difference from best of 3. And if they win, it's either gonna be a bad beating, or it's gonna be like they lose the first 2 games, and then like, okay, now I'm interested, and then they play hard the last 3. It's like it's still like the same result, you know.
I see.
But you know, for like I'll bring in like a different game example. So for League of Legends, I've watched a couple of like matches for MSI like before coming here, and MSI's I think last, like, is it top 4 or top? Like the last stage or whatever it is. They have a lot of best of 5 matches for it, and I get tired by the 3rd game. Like I'm like, man, can this be over? But that's also because League is kind of like because you're not playing on a different map, or you're not playing different. I mean, they play different champions, but it's like the same players, and they don't play on a different like map or anything. So oftentimes it's just like, okay, let's execute our plan. Whatever goes through the draft, we'll execute our plan.
I'm gonna watch 15 minutes of.
Yeah, exactly. So like it ends up feeling repetitive to watch, and best of 5 like ameliorates that quite a bit. Dota was the same fatigue issue, I'd say, where I mean the games are super long already, but the nice thing about Dota is that there's a lot of more like viable picks. So even though it's like best of 5, it doesn't feel like I can predict the entire thing, despite even if one team is better. If that one team has like a bad draft, then it's like, okay, that extra game or the extra couple of games that were possible actually makes a big difference. But for fighting games, I feel like it's still like pretty predictable, unless it's like infiltration, because he knows a lot of characters in SF4. That might be like the only exception. Frafra, I see you typing. Is that something you agree with? Let us know if you can hear that. Walker, what do you think? Do you think it makes a difference to have best of 5 versus best of 3?
Yes, I do. I do think it will make a difference. Of course, each game is going to last a bit longer, but also gives more time for players to adapt, as well as warm up, get their game plan going. How should I put this? Since it's longer, it gives them more time to be able to read what your opponent is doing, and for you to be able to, I want to say execute your gameplay, but more so get a feel for what your opponent is doing, what they are going to be like, what their play style is, all that kind of stuff. With that said, that I think it would probably benefit higher level players than, like, let's just say lower level players. Like, I use myself as an example again. Like, I may be intermediate player, and I have like caused upsets with actually taking a game or 2 from like higher level players before. But that's the thing, that once they figure me out, then it's all over.
Okay, wait. I'm sorry. I'm not sure if I completely follow. Right. So you said gives players more time to warm up, but then you're complaining about like if they warm up, then they can beat you. And then another thing I'm like a bit quizzical about too is that as a viewer, right? I don't really spend my time watching a fighting game tournament to see Daigo warm up. I want to see him beat up people, right? I don't want to see him like, oh, I'm sleepy, or I'm drunk from the previous night. Like I want to see him at his full power, I want to see him take it seriously from the very beginning.
That is true. I guess I was thinking, early. Like when you're first starting in the tournament, I was thinking even from like when you actually start playing it, I realize, oh wait, you're probably playing, casual matches before then, so never mind about the warm up. I guess me personally, it's like I don't know. I feel like I'm a little biased against the best of 3. Sorry, best of 5.
Okay.
In all honesty, like there have actually been many Strive games I lost because best of 3 preferring best of 5 format.
Okay, well, I'll give you this, right? I mean, there's still room for longer sets, right? Like, it's good to have like money match sets or sets where it's like a grudge match or some kind of storyline match between 2 players. I think that's where long sets are nice because you get to see that for just longer. You get to take it in longer. You get to enjoy the fun longer. The novelty doesn't just fade away, because it's like, oh yeah, this person got hit by the unbeatable mix, and it's like, that's the end of the exhibition. Like, exhibition is for showing off, right? So you want just more of that. I think that's where longer sets shine. But
I agree.
For tournaments, which is what we're talking about, I mean, Retro Age is asking basically if you feel like, because many of the points we illustrated, those same things could be said for best of 5. So basically, for what reason would you still feel like best of 3 is better? Or do you feel like it's game specific?
I feel like, honestly, it's game specific. Like, honestly, I think, let's just say Strive, for example, that game works actually way better. Even though what I just said, I was complaining about Strive using your best, wait, you said best 3, not best 5, right?
Right, yeah. Basically, why do we still, I obviously agree that best of 3 is great, but, what would be your reason why it wouldn't be better than best of 5? Because there's very similar arguments you can make for best of 5 as best of 3.
Gotcha.
Yeah, haven't you seen the Twitter post?
Yeah. I mean,
Put the same format but replace like one word or 2 words.
I can pull up the tweet for those of you that aren't aware.
Yeah, the tweet was so funny.
It was.
Funniest thing ever.
Yeah.
Oh.
Walker, go ahead.
Gotcha. Good. Oh, right. Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure, can you reiterate the question if you don't mind?
Like, what is there anything going in favor for first to 5, right? Or like any like, because we talked a lot about first to 1, first to 3, just getting ideas on first to 5, thoughts on first to 5. Or sorry, not first, best to 5.
Yeah,
sorry. Anything new on best of 5 or something that you?
Okay. For best of 5, okay. I guess pauses for best of 5 would be able to feel out your opponent better. For those of you who takes a bit more time to download your opponent, that would be really beneficial to have best 5, but likewise, it could also make the game last longer. Like, for example, for BlazBlue, I strongly disagree with doing a best of 5 for a normal kind of tournament because it would make the tournament last too long. While for a shorter game like Strive, since each individual game is much shorter, in order to have a decent length turn, you need to have that best of 5.
What do you guys think of this?
Those are some
Adding upon that, I was thinking like in like Evo or something. My original quadrupulation first to 1. That's what I was suggesting, right? But like for more like smaller tournaments, I actually think best of 5 is a lot better. Like for like regionals or smaller tournaments, and I know it takes longer to run at like the regional or at the local or whatever.
Right.
But I think at that point it should be okay that it runs longer because there's less TOing because there's less people.
Yeah.
So and then you get more people to like play more games, and the salty run where you're like, how like when if it's like okay, you ask your friend, hey, let's play a game, right? and then you lose, and then you're like, okay, best of 3.
Yeah.
And then you win one, and then you lose one again, and then you're like, oh, best of 5.
Yeah,
And you just keep adding the best ofs.
Yeah.
I think at the smaller, okay, magnitude of people, it's better to have longer tournaments, and at larger amounts of people, like, it's better to have like smaller tournaments, longer rounds, bigger tournament, less rounds.
Yeah.
That's kind of like what I was thinking.
Making that like basically an adaptive adjustment.
Yeah.
For the size. Yeah. I mean, it's not something that's too easy, but I feel like we do definitely make things harder for ourselves by stubbornly sticking with the plain double elimination FGC. That is. I have this tweet from I'm gonna post it in voice text for you, Waka, too, but I have this tweet from Giuna, and it says, those of you that are on the stream can see it. It says, if someone wants to argue that first 3 is the best because it reduces randomness and improves who the better player is, then you explain why first 5 isn't even better. It reduces more randomness and improves even better who can handle the pressure and make fast adaptations. And that's a quote tweet of someone saying the same thing, but first to 2 and first to 1, respectively. So, I mean, we've kind of, I think we've covered that in a bit less, jocular of a manner, but it's kind of the same thing, right? Like, I still think that you can effectively determine who's the best player with some of the formats we've drafted, and it's not even like trying to increase like the size of the sets. In fact, in my opinion, it reduces the time for the tournaments because you don't need 3 whole days for all the games that we mentioned for the formats that we drafted. But anyway, let me look at what we have left. So we talked about, close the open circuit. So we can talk about this more detail now. And I think also game-specific things to what we discussed are worth hovering over too. So, so I mentioned briefly League being best of 5 is awful because it's just so hard to keep my attention on it. But I think on the other hand, having best of 5 for CS:GO as only the grand final, not for other matches, because that would just take too long. Like there was basically, my example is that in CS:GO there was a best of 5 final last year at Intel Extreme Masters Cologne, and that entire final took I think 7 hours to finish.
Jeez.
But the match was insane. Like I think that was a proof of concept for the potential of best of 5 used in a competitive tournament setting. If the teams are super well matched, then each different map that's played throughout the best of 5 is a big difference compared to doing it for best of 3. Because the difference in CS:GO is basically you have a set of 7 maps in the pool at any given point, and the teams ban maps together until one map or a couple maps are left over, and that's the maps that they play on, right? And the game can change to a non-trivial level depending on what map you're playing on. So even having best of 3 versus best of 1 is a big deal, just with regards to maps, not even whether you're the better team or not. So that aspect is very much different than fighting games where, playing on a different stage for the most part doesn't really matter unless it's like Tekken. Tekken, if you lose, you can pick the stage. VF, if you lose, you can pick the stage. And stages change how you can apply your conditioning because, you might have walls, or you might have an infinite stage, or you might be able to break the floor for more damage, those kinds of things, right? So perhaps for 3D fighters, or those games where those kind of conditions actually matter, we might want to have best of 5 in those cases where, okay, that makes sense. Basically, we don't want to mess too much with the slider for those games because it does change significantly how it's played. But then for League, best of 5 is awful because the only thing that's going to change between each game is the draft. And honestly, the drafts in League are pretty samey across every team. That's a whole other issue in and of itself because the balance is way different than fighting games. But for Strive, you're gonna see quite a concentrated subset of characters in the game, and stages don't change anything. The most that's gonna change in between a game is whether the player was asleep and now they're awake because they lost or something, or they switch characters. That's about it. That's my closure on what we just talked about. So closed versus open circuit, right? we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, where if you have like a league and you set up points that you can earn to make it to like the final closed circuit tournament, then okay, that's like a viable model, which has been done for a long time now. It's been done for Capcom Pro Tour, for Tekken World Tour, recently for Dragon Ball World Tour, which is up in the air right now. It's been proven in other esports, as a matter of fact, so that's definitely a working model. But for some reason, it feels like impossible to work out realistically without the support of companies. I'm not sure why that seems to be the case for FGC, but we just don't see it anymore. Like, Road to EVO used to be marketed as, okay, if you win this tournament, then it's like, all right, you qualified to EVO. But then EVO, anyone can just sign up. So it's like, well, like, what's the difference, right? Basically, what I'm saying is, like, in you guys' opinion, do we need these sort of qualifying tournaments to, like, or do we need qualifiers to these closed circuit tournaments in order to bring up the level of competition and increase the viewer interest and all of that, basically make fighting games a more interesting esport? Or do you feel like where we are right now is all right?
I think we need more money.
We need more money.
I think we need more money as well.
Yeah, I mean,
And continue.
no, you got it. Good.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, I believe to gain more interest, we do need some closed circuit tournaments. That's not to say we should abolish all the open circuit tournaments, but have I can hear myself through your mic. It's a little bit bothering me.
You can?
Is it my breathing?
No. I can hear myself through the
Oh,
mic.
you hear yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's because of my laptop speakers. I'm sorry.
I'll just ignore it. But anyways, to increase interest in the games and the players, I believe that there should be some closed circuits and more money involved in those circuits just to boost the interest of fighting games in general, as well as interest among viewers. Like, I think it could greatly boost all of those aspects, but I don't think we should completely abolish open tournaments, especially since it's very closely to, the roots of the FGC, as well as I still think it would be greatly beneficial for, there to be still big tournaments where anyone can enter. But I believe a closed circuits, like at least a couple noble ones, would really boost the interest of fighting games as a whole, in my opinion.
I have a suggestion, but you guys won't like it.
Okay, what is it?
I think if you have a closed circuit with not fighting game players, like not pro players, but rather very big influencers.
Oh no.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Well, like in the gaming scene.
I think that would increase interest. But go on. I'm interested.
I think it would increase it more because people the people who are watching top players play the game are already playing fighting games,
Okay.
right? That you're not gonna get anything from that because like when I watch the top players, I'm already playing the fighting game. Like, there's nothing to gain from. Okay, I'm not sure how much non-fighting game people watch like pro gameplay or like these closed exhibitions with like, okay, Daigo versus Justin Wong, right? That won't attract new players, in my opinion. I don't think, right? So, but if you have like, I don't know, who are some big Twitch streamers or whatever, like
XQC.
XQC versus what? What's that guy? The guy who plays the FPSs?
Dr. Disrespect.
Dr. Disrespect, right? XQC versus Dr. Disrespect, right?
Oh no.
I mean, the players you're bringing in might be questionable,
Yeah.
but you are bringing in players, right? So you have things like that instead of like Justin Wong versus Dagger. You have XQC versus Dr. Disrespect in Street Fighter 6, right? And then they're all their smack talk and like, oh, I'm better than you, right? All those players, the people watching, I can do better than Dr. Disrespect. I can do better than XQC,
Okay.
right? They go and play the fighting game, and then you get new players, right?
I guess so.
See, I know you guys wouldn't like it, but I think it would work.
That would increase interest. Like, I actually do think that increased interest feel like many people within the FGC would hate for that to happen, and I think that would be really sad. It would be a sad day.
No.
But at the same time, I think it would increase interest, definitely.
Like you get the big Genshin Impact player, like top streamers for Genshin Impact, and then you make him play Street Fighter 6.
No, yeah, I don't know about that one. Dude. I actually was gonna say that I think I trapped you guys. Like the closed circuit tournaments, like have already been proven in a couple of other esports to not be as effective as they might seem. Like obviously it gets a lot of fans interested, but in terms of like the actual competition level for like being a good showcase of the genre of the game, a lot of those pros would, especially if they play so much in that environment, they eventually get too comfortable against themselves and they start to develop like their own like player metagame that might not be as interesting to watch over time. Like for example, this happened in CSGO where the tier 1 teams got basically too comfortable with playing like super vanilla, like not a risk taking like Counter-Strike, which is basically a way of saying like they relied on their skills that were like superior compared to the tier 2 teams, whereas the tier 2 teams were always like trying to find out new things, like take risk and play in a very unpredictable way that caught a lot of tier 1 teams by surprise when the major came around. So having closed circuits for everything is obviously not a good idea to avoid that. But at the same time, I'm not sure how much people would be fond of the fact like, okay, like Daigo's doing really well and against other good players, but then he's like losing to these like scrubs in the open tournaments, like it might kind of tarnish some of the reputation of the pros. Maybe we should have a couple of closed circuit only years where it's like, okay, no open circuit tournaments except for online ones that the local TOs run, and have every single tournament be okay, you have to qualify through some closed qualifier or qualify by being like a well-known player. Just see how it goes for a couple of years. That's obviously gonna bring a lot of disappointment to a lot of people because they'd be like, wait, where's my fighting games? Like I'm trying to go to Combo Breaker or I'm trying to go to Evo, but they're not allowing me in, which is that's happened to a couple of players. Let's not name them to avoid any drama, but that could be something to try. I think it's always interesting to see how like this is mentioned in the Melee scene too, but the top Melee players play differently against each other compared to against like the peasants, the plebeians. But that also has to do with just like the meta games. So like that's not really necessarily related to what we're talking about here, but it's still an interesting topic. All right, any further thoughts on this? We're about to reach the 2-hour mark. I think we can get some last thoughts in.
For the closed open, I think fighting games, right? It's more like a can you get to the place? Because like in esports, right, CS:GO and stuff, they have like huge sponsors, right? They just fly wherever they need to go to play the game, right? Fighting games, and there's some players that have that, but most players kind of don't.
I mean, this is no money,
right? No money, exactly, right? So I don't really think it's like an open versus closed issue versus like a money issue. Like you could have a bunch of closed tournaments if you had the money to like fly all the players together to play a closed tournament. That's, but that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
So versus like in the big esports, you just all organized, right? So you get everyone to come together. Or I'm not sure. Do they play online? Like is that like, or is it all LAN?
Online? They do have online for some,
but it's mostly LAN.
It's mostly mostly
okay.
LAN.
Yeah.
And a lot of like online for CS:GO, it's similar to fighting game players where they'll complain about 4 frame. In CS:GO, they complain about 80 ping and 60 ping. So, even though there's
I would have hit that on 20.
Right, yeah, exactly. Dude, like when I was playing League, 60 ping was fine, but for CS:GO, people complain about that. Like, and that's not even. I think that's like under 4 frames. No, under 5 frames. But I mean, okay, 4 frames is kind of bad for fighting, admittedly. But yeah.
Hey, I hear people complaining about 60 FPS. I'm fine with 25 FPS. You know, that might be a hot take, but I can play. When people are like, "Oh, 25 FPS, this is choppy." I play games in 25 FPS. I'm like, it's not that bad.
Okay, here comes new challenger.
That means your Sam Show matches are legitimate. It took you like, I don't know, I'm like 40.
To be fair, Samsha's kind of slow anyway, so it's like you can't tell 60 FPS versus 5 FPS, you know.
Yeah.
No, but yeah. There's one more thing I was gonna mention. So we had MGT this past Friday, and because of time constraints, we had to run single elimination, best of 3 for almost everything, and obviously Mystery Game Tournament is not very serious, like in terms of competitive level wise, but there are plenty of people that I noticed took it seriously. So let's not name names, but there's no need to take it seriously if it's like best of 3 Mystery Game Tournament where you've never. Most people there have never played the games, right? But it's interesting to see like single elimination be like immediately considered, oh, this is not competitive, but then for tennis, like single elimination is like standard. Like people are fine with it. It seems like, and there are plenty of times where obviously like, and it's probably disingenuous of me to say like, oh yeah, people are okay with single elimination, because obviously tennis games, especially in Grand Slams, take forever. Best of 5 for I think sets it's called, or whatever. I don't know. It
goes long.
Yeah, the tennis games are super long, so like single elimination is fair. Like the better player usually will win still, but that doesn't mean it'll be an interesting game to watch or that it'll be a good game necessarily. But it's like, okay, the better player wins, so that allows for people to continue with their this is the GOAT player, or this is the best player right now, and they deserve the number 1 rank. At least it allows for the pundits to keep that up, right? But it's hard to see that translating over to fighting games, because no matter how long you make, like let's say you make a best of 19 single elimination for a Mystery Game Tournament, people aren't gonna like that. It's not like like even if let's say it's not Mystery Game Tournament, right? Let's say it's Bleak Dark Souls. Bleak Dark Souls best of 19. People are gonna get tired by the first like 5 games. Facing the same person, even if they play against different characters, right? I think part of the issue with making sets longer is that you just aren't taking into account the game itself and the difficulties and the fatigue that comes along with lengthening the length of a set. I think for anyone that is a TO and is watching this, formats aren't as cut and dry as, all right, we'll make it longer so that the better player will win. There's less volatility. There has to be a good consideration of the game itself and whether it's worth the trade-offs for time for a number of groups of different people, not just like the good players, the pro players, or the well-known players, but also for for the players that are like onliners or the O2ers under usual circumstances. Something I actually failed to mention this whole time. I think we can probably use this for the remainder of the time. Do you guys think seeding is appropriate at all in any seeding?
Oh, seeding. No, I was thinking about that earlier, but I got.
Sorry.
Yeah. Seeding, I think, should not be a thing. I understand that you want to see like you seed players so that the top players come up if they just win the brackets, right? But absolutely not. I think it should be entirely random, and for a reason why, because that's how it should be. Like that's like the fairness, right?
Right.
If you seed the bracket, you make it so that there is a desired outcome for your tournament. Like you have an outcome that you want to see, and it's okay. So if you argue that the viewers want to see that, they will see it, just not in top bracket.
Right.
Right. They will still see the match. It just won't be in like the top 8 or whatever because they'll be played in pools.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think if you want to argue that most of the viewers are in top, like most of the viewership comes from watching top 8, and that people won't, if the Daigo gets killed out in like pools, right? No one's gonna watch that, right? But I disagree. You see Daigo lose in pools against another top player, people are still gonna watch that, regardless it's in top 8 or in pools.
As long as it's streamed.
Exactly, as long as it's like a recorded match. So
right.
like, you can rather than having seeded tournament seeds, right?
Right.
You should have top players or players of interest have like their matches recorded or streamed.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you have to do.
That definitely solves it for like fighting games. I think CS:GO fans are like kind of salty because everyone just watches the popular teams, and seeing the popular team get eliminated like super early. seeing the popular teams get eliminated super early causes people to get like pretty mad. Like, oh, I could have seen this team in the finals. Like, there was a time where FaZe and Navi both faced each other for elimination from the whole thing before playoffs even started, and people were like, how did the seeding happen? Like, the seeding that should have been used was tournament seeding rather than Valve seeding, which never considers tournaments throughout the year, right? But I mean, you just win your games. I mean, come on, just win. If you're good, if you're actually any good, just win all your games. It's not that hard.
Exactly.
I'm kind of being silly about it, but you know, seeding is kind of like the best, the nicest way of putting it, while also on purpose being a pot stirrer, is it's like legalized match fixing for the tournament organizers, because as you said, they're trying to create this entire tournament result with the seeding. Like, it's like, okay, this is what I want to be the outcome, and this is how I want it to go along the way. And it's basically anti-upset to have seeds, because you know you're trying to put the best players as far from each other as possible until like later on in the bracket. If we adjust, obviously, for double eliminate, like the way we run things right now, seeding, okay, that it makes sense, right? Because you want to protect the top players' egos by not eliminating them early. But that also just says the flaws about double elimination best of 3. We probably do need to explore other formats so that seeding isn't as like blatantly, you know, match fixing as it currently is. But I think that's a perfect legend take. So, you know, let's not go too crazy with Twitter takes here. Waka, any words you have on this?
Yeah, my thoughts on seeding is that's actually something I thought about kind of a while. I always thought that like this top players probably like seeding that way. You know, the early matches, those are pretty much, they're going to be very easy and they're pretty much guaranteed spots higher up. Well, someone who's just starting out or intermediate, it's kind of dreadful to think about seeding, because that means, you're probably going to be put up against, well, actually intermediate, you're probably just going to be put up against someone in the middle, like around your scope. But if you're a new player or haven't been to too many tournaments, you're probably going to be paired up against someone that's way better than you, so you're going to lose right away. So it is kind of, like you said, it is kind of match fixing.
Yeah.
Like, it's rigging in a way without outright saying it's rigged.
Yeah, and I feel like this seems to be more like this definitely seems like more of a factor in open circuit tournaments again, where you have like randos competing with top players, right? The rando has to prove themselves, and it's so hard to prove yourself if you're not already like known or have a reputation.
That's correct.
Yeah. I think. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I will say that I do agree with Retro Rage that you will see that match either way, because, you know, if it happens with pools, like two top players are battling each other, they're probably the TOs, it would be kind of stupid if they didn't schedule that match to be on stream. But I will say that they'll probably get way more views if it happens to be top 8, just because it's the finals of the tournament. That's all I want to say on that part. It's like, it still would boost even more the ratings if it was in top 8. So they're not going to stop seeding, unfortunately.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. Go ahead.
It might be done because it incentivizes top players to come to the tournament. Like, actually, because, you know, top players, essentially their life is the game, right?
Right.
So if you make it so that it's not for the top player, they might like not go, right? They're like, oh, I don't like how this is seeded or random seeding, because I might lose early in the bracket and make no money.
Right.
Even though there's already like no money being made, or kind of. Yeah. Right. So it might not be worth it for them to go out and fly to like a tournament or travel for a tournament that won't seed them. Right. So from a top player perspective, it might be like, you know, they want it that way, right? So or from the tournament perspective, they want it that way, so top players do come, right?
Also riskier for their reputation.
Whose reputation?
Like the top player's reputation. Like if they can just randomly get seeded and place like 60th or something.
Oh, but then if you look into the bracket and they lose to like someone who's also a top player, I guess if someone who doesn't look into it, they'll be like, oh, he's bad, right?
Yeah.
But then
You have like 3 top 60s or something. He hasn't been talking.
Yeah, okay. I suppose, yeah.
Yeah, it's weird for I think it's weirder for other games than fighting games, because fighting games, you know, usually it's all about your skills, right? It's not about like other factors that are not as easy to control, like randomness or volatility, right? Like a lot of times people think of it as the skill-based genre in competitive disciplines, but I mean even poker, which is, you know, inherently gambling, there's a lot of skill involved, and the better players usually win.
I disagree.
Okay, all right, maybe that struck a nerve somewhere. Oh,
It's all luck.
No, maybe that's for another time, but I think that struck a nerve in Retro Rage. All right, any last thoughts, you guys?
I will say that random seeding is definitely the most even playing field, but realistically, I don't think it's ever going to happen, unfortunately. Like, I'm actually advocate for random seeding, actually. I think it's would be the best for even playing field among all the players.
Random seeding, would you still use, what would, maybe this is a good way to conclude it. So I'll ask Retro Rage if he has anything, and then we'll reach this conclusion. You have anything?
No, I got nothing.
Okay, yeah, I guess what would be like our, you know, if we're trying to synthesize everything we said today, what would be all the components of like the ideal tournament format? So would we use like random seeding plus quadruple elimination plus best of one plus open circuit to everybody? Like what would be the combination? Like what would be the puzzle pieces?
What would?
I personally like. Oh yeah, go ahead.
But for me, I guess it would be, even though I would just take, for example, like let's just say a major. I think it would just be, after what you said about, you know, closed circuits actually don't boost, you know, the interest, I should say, overall interest of the event, mainly just people who are already fans
Yeah.
of like the game or genre. I would say maybe something like, personally, I think random seeding would be more fair to all players, but even I recognize that seeding is probably important to actually maintain viewership, you know, for top eights. It would benefit viewership for top eights.
Okay, how
So,
about? Mhm.
I would say like probably the best format for large tournaments. I really can't say at this moment. I would need to investigate more, but for evening out the playing field, it would maybe be a combination of like random seeding and the very wacky but strangely kind of even play field of like quadruple elimination. You know, first to one. It might be something like kind of like that.
Well, think about it. In quadruple elimination, first to one, random seeding would be okay because there's 4 slots that could the pro player, even if they're like 4 pro players in like one bracket, there's still actually would that work?
I mean, it can it would be really low chance of getting like 4 pro players to play each other every single elimination game, but
very low chance, as well as there's many chances for them to actually come back.
And also, like, if a pro player loses, the other pro player is gonna win. Like if they play each other, one of them is gonna win. So like, it's still like unlikely for it to go bad if you have more chances to lose.
Yeah. Okay.
I was thinking actually, if the ideal format for FTC would, if we want to go along this, you know, this team cope that fighting games are not popular because you can't play with your friends or you can't play in teams. Have this team format that I mentioned earlier. Make it an open circuit. Make it no elimination at all. Like literally just play 2 games against each player on other teams. Just 2 games. And have that contribute to your points over the course of the tournament. You can make it multiple days to make it kind of interesting so that there's at least something to watch for sponsors to be proud of. And then if you don't want to have team format, the ideal individual like singles format I think would be so not single or double elimination, but we have the, let's say, regional level tournament where it's Swiss, and you have points that you work towards that either contribute to your Glico or to some other amount of prize money, let's say, that you can get at the end for how much wins you get. The other thing that you could do is make sure that you if you want to seed, then you use a prior Glico rating that's been developed over time for you as a player in order to seed, because that's the only reliable seeding. There's no reason to say, oh, this person got first at this tournament, so we should seed them accordingly. No, we should use results they've had over the course of the tournament, and then build them towards like a Glico rating or an ELO that actually gives like a more accurate seeding than just saying this is their result, so they should be seeded first. Retro Rage had like a I
just had a massive brain explosion.
Yeah.
I think we should do away with individual fighting game tournaments.
Okay.
Completely.
Okay.
And
okay.
only
Now you're talking.
closed tournaments are like 1v1.
Okay.
Individual. I think the standard for fighting games should actually be team based.
Yes.
And so here the Karushi Drive just massive brain explosion for me right now, because fighting games are there. You don't get any players because people don't what do you call it? You need someone else to play with to play a fighting game, right? And if you look at the tournaments, you watch all the media, it's just the one person that go in the bracket. It kind of sucks, right? But if you make the standard team based, like Evo is team based, right? You need like 4 people or 5 people or 3 people or even 2 people, just duos. That makes it so that everyone who gets into fighting games has to bring another person along with them.
Yes.
So if any new player wants to play Street Fighter 6, right, and they're like thinking about, I don't go to tournaments, or even at the local scene, it's always a team based, right? Even locals, regionals, they're all team based, except for closed tournaments. All open tournaments are team based. The person who picks up Street Fighter 6 has to be like, I need someone to play with. I need someone to bring along with me to join these tournaments, or to like play. You know what? Even better, it should be in-game team.
Oh my goodness.
Matchmaking.
No.
In fighting games.
Not
That'd
online
be even
666.
better.
Not online 666.
Also, I missed what he said. I heard no, but
No, it's actually genius, because that's how League works. That's how League got so big. It's like, it's a 5 game. I'm gonna bring my friends along, or I need to bring somebody. I don't want to play alone, right? But fighting games, you can play alone. League of Legends, you cannot play. I mean, you could play your rank solo queue, but you're not incentivized to play alone, and that's what brings so many players in. Versus fighting games, you are incentivized to play alone. But if you make it so it's incentivized to play with other people, we'll have some money in our genre.
A lot of money.
So I don't know. I actually, now that I've been reformed, I think actually the fighting game standard should be open tournament, team based, like round robin or something like you said.
Right.
I don't think the Glico system or ELO should be done,
Yeah, sure,
but like the
sure.
round robin point system where you're playing for your team. And then, what were the other factors? Oh yeah, you like, would I do first to 1 in that case? Well, that's
No, I was just saying 2 games. Like so.
Or 2 games. 2 games where you can
So you
tie,
can tie,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You always play 2. Oh,
Right.
yeah.
So, like, it's still
round
constant.
robin team, yeah. Okay.
Mhm,
Yeah. I think that's actually the big brain move.
Yeah, I had gotten the idea, actually, shouts to 3K and Desh. I don't know if Destro's Destro in this Discord, but I had gone to Bushy Road Springfest with them for a card game called Vanguard. And Springfest format, you have to bring 2 other players with you to play, and it's basically team-wise elimination, so you can't really tie in that event, but I think bringing in ties allows not only more variance, but also doesn't make it feel like your games were for naught. Is it like Street Fighter League? I watched Street Fighter League Season 1, and I don't remember the format for that, so I'm sorry. But it might be similar to that.
Massive brain.
Massive brain, yes.
My
Let's
fighting
go.
game, it's gonna be like that.
Okay.
The only mode for like rank competitive, you have to bring someone else, and you have to work as a team to get the points. Oh, so genius. It's so genius.
All right.
Massive brain.
No, but okay, if it's like Street Fighter League, it's not, because Street Fighter League is closed circuit. We're talking about open circuit. All right, cool. Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right, cool, guys. I think this was a good discussion. A lot of people frowned upon this podcast topic, and I think they missed out. We talked about a great deal of good things, I think. We even.
I thought this was a good topic. Why did they frown upon it?
No,
Well,
Rick Jace
they come mad. They have to come on the.
Yeah. We gotta bring them. Next time. Rick Jace was like, I don't have anything to say, and anyway. All right, yeah, this was a good topic. It was a good conversation. I think people look back on it and enjoy themselves. And of course, we got our first in-person podcast. This was a pleasure, Retro Rage. Thanks for having me. These are Retro Rage's quarters along with his other roommates. So I'm really appreciative that I was able to join along for the in-person one along with them. And thanks Waka for tagging along with us on Discord. This was. Yeah, this was a pain to get set up, as he knows, but I'm glad that we eventually got to it and we were able to integrate it smoothly into the episode. And for those of you that watched the YouTube stream, thanks you guys for watching. Hope you catch one of the future episodes of the podcast, which I think coming up we'll probably be talking about. Trying to see if there's any hints at what we'll be talking about next.
I got a quick question for you guys to think about.
Oh yeah,
for maybe a future next topic.
Okay.
Should esports be a job?
Let's go. Now you're kicking.
So that's a thing for you guys to think about. I'll give you my take just briefly with no explanation.
Okay.
I think esports or professional video games should not be a job and should be like a side thing. You should have your like normal job and esports on the side. It should be a esport like. Yeah, just putting it out there.
Venture capital on Sudoku Watch. Yeah, all that money they threw at the young professionals. Unfortunate. I have a lot to say on that too, but let's reserve that for a future episode if necessary. All right, thanks you guys for tuning in. This was Ursine Combo Lab Audio, episode number 17 on tournament formats. This is Crucial Drive and let me turn back the camera on after this GIF finishes. This is Crucial Drive and Retro Rage signing out. See you guys later.